that the Lord may fulfill his word which he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons take heed to their way, to walk before me in truth, with all their heart and with all their soul, he said, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. So God gave David a promise. He told him, I will have someone from your descendants on the throne all the time, as long as they stick to my commandments, as long as they walk with me. So David here is telling Solomon, you do have a promise that if you walk with God, you will be confirmed on your seat, on your throne, and your descendants will also be confirmed on the throne. Of course, that didn't happen, and it only happened at the beginning of the life of Solomon, and then he deviated, and his sons deviated, and then the kingdom was split like we talked last time. But here, again, you see that, what is David giving Solomon? He didn't give his kids much, because we said before that he wasn't paying attention to them that much. Last time we talked about this. But maybe the one thing that he gave them, which was really important, was a good example. A good example of walking with God all his life. So sometimes we should, we do the same thing. We should be thinking of giving our kids something spiritual. And we all think about what to give our kids in terms of finance, in terms of, right? But what spiritual things do we actually hand over to our kids? Any experience with God, anything spiritual that benefited me in my life, that's what I should be handing over to my kids. Moreover, also what Joab the son of Zeruiah did to me, and what he did to the two commanders of the armies of Israel, to Abner the son of Ner, and Amasa the son of Jether, whom he killed. And he shed the blood of war in peacetime, and put the blood of war in his belt that was around his waist, and on his sandals that were on his feet. Therefore, do according to your wisdom, and do not let his gray hair go down to the grave in peace. Now, David, at the end of his life, he remembered what Joab did. Who's Joab? Joab is the leader of the army, right? Since David started, he was the leader of the army. And what did he do? If you remember in the books of Samuel, what did Joab do? He killed two army leaders in the time of peace. Because one of them, when David started taking over the kingdom, there was an army leader for Saul, and he was going to be the army leader, but Joab wanted to be the army leader, right, the head of the army. So he killed him. He went to talk with him peacefully and killed him. Another time, when Absalom revolted, and there was a war between the two armies, David and Absalom, and then David won the war, the head of the army of Absalom also was promised by David to be the next head of the army. So Joab heard this, and then he again went to him peacefully and killed him. In both situations, David did not agree, but he couldn't do anything. Now we can ask, why wasn't David able to do anything? Because he was the king, right? But Joab was a strong man, and David and Joab and his two brothers were leaders in the army. And they were actually almost cousins to David. But they were strong, and David could not do anything to them. He did not agree with what they did, but he couldn't touch them. But at the end of his life, he told Solomon this. So why is he saying this now? Is it a revenge? Is it a payback for what Joab did? It's more that and he's telling his son that if you leave this man in charge of the army, he's going to give you a hard time. Your kingdom is not going to be stable. He's a threat. That's what he's telling him. He's a threat to you. So know by your wisdom how to deal with him. Now, of course, you're going to see in this chapter that Solomon killed a couple of people at the beginning of his reign, right? In order to establish his kingdom in peace. And then we always ask the question, so we know that Solomon is a man of God, and how is he starting his reign like this? And this is in the time when he was actually close to God. And this is something that we can really learn from this story, is that we can judge other people without thinking about the background, the circumstances. Yani, I can't be sitting now here in church, in the 21st century and judging someone like that did this like about 3,000 years ago, not knowing anything about how things went at the time, and not knowing like what he was thinking about. He was a king, right? And he was thinking about establishing his kingdom in peace. He doesn't want any trouble. And that's what they used to do at the time. That if anyone gives you trouble as a king, you just take care of them, right? In order to have like things going well. Does that mean that he's a bad man? We can't say that. There is a lot of stuff in the Bible that talks about Solomon, especially at the beginning of his reign, that he is a wise man, that he's a man that's close to God, that God was supporting him, right? So the message is we can judge. There are things that, of course, are obviously wrong, but so we can judge the person without knowing what led him to do this. That explains a lot of things in the Old Testament too, because sometimes we see wars and fights and battles, and we say, like, how are these the people of God? Well, the times were different. The times were different. But that can help us now too, because we deal with people all over the place with different backgrounds. So we don't know what everyone's background is that led him to do what he's doing. But show kindness to the sons of Barzillai the Gileadite. Who is Barzillai the Gileadite? He was the one that supported David when he escaped from Absalom. He's the one that supported him and his people and gave them food and hosted them. And let them be among those who eat at your table, for so they came to me when I fled from Absalom, your brother. So he remembered something good. But at the same time, when he escaped from Absalom, he remembered Barzillai, who was good to him. He also remembered the man that cursed him. You remember the man that cursed David when he fled from Absalom? And see, you have with you Shimei, the son of Gera, a Benjamite from Bahurim, who cursed me with a malicious curse in the day when I went to Mahanaim. But he came down to me at the Jordan, and I swore to him by the Lord, saying, I will not put you to death with the sword. Now therefore do not hold him guiltless, for you are a wise man and know what you ought to do to him, but bring his gray hair down to the grave with blood. So this was different. Like when he talked about Joab, he said, deal with him according to your wisdom. Right? He did not say kill him. I mean, he's going to end up killing him. But David did not say that explicitly. But in this case, he told him, you have to kill him. And so what is this? Yeah, again, David, the great man of God, did he not forgive this person? You remember when Shimei was like throwing stones at him and cursing him? And then actually Abishai, the Joab's brother, he told him, let me go and cut his head. Like, he cannot be talking to you like this. And David said, no, don't touch him. The Lord told him to curse me. So David had like a great, position on this, that he was forgiving. He took it from the hands of God. But at the end of his life, he remembered this, and he told Solomon, you have to kill him. You can't let it go. You can't let this go. Right? Again, it's the same thing that we talked about with Solomon applies to this too. But here, also remember that David held really the anointment of God very high. Remember when he met Saul a couple of times, when Saul was wanting to kill him, and he met him a couple of times and he had the chance to kill Saul, and his men kept pushing him to kill him. What did he say? He said, I cannot touch the anointed of God. So for David, the anointed of God is something really big. That king that's anointed by oil from God, that's really a big thing. I can't touch him. So also he was thinking about this in the back of his mind with Shimei, the son of Gera. Like he's cursing the God's anointed, right? So for him, this is a big sin that cannot go unpunished. Although he did not punish him himself, because at the time, he took it as something that God allowed, but ultimately he did not let it go. So David rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. And these were the last words of David. The period that David reigned over Israel was 40 years. 7 years he reigned in Hebron, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years. Then Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his kingdom was firmly established. So you will hear this a couple of times in the chapter. His kingdom was firmly established. And actually all this chapter is about this, how he established his kingdom firmly. Now Adonijah, the son of Haggith, came to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon. So she said, "Do you come peaceably?" And he said, "Peaceably." Do you remember last chapter? What did Adonijah do? He proclaimed himself king, right? And then David said, "No, Solomon is the king," and Solomon was ordained king, anointed king, and that was it. So Adonijah, was thinking about a different plan. Although Solomon, that was the end of this, he did not touch him or he did not threaten him or anything. But Adonijah had a different plan in mind. What was it? He came to Solomon's mother, Bathsheba, and he said, "I have something to say to you." And she said, "Say it." Then he said, "You know that the kingdom was mine, and all Israel had set their expectations on me, that I should reign. However, the kingdom has been turned over and has become my brother's, for it was his from the Lord." Now there is something, there is a contradiction here. He said, everybody was waiting for me to be king, but God chose Solomon. But he knew that God chose Solomon from before. But what's the plan now? Now I ask one petition of you. Do not deny me. And she said to him, "Say it." Then he said, "Please speak to King Solomon, for he will not refuse you, that he may give me Abishag the Shunammite as wife." Well, who's Abishag the Shunammite? She is considered David's concubine. So Bathsheba said, "Very well, I will speak for you to the king." So what's the plan here? He knows that Solomon is king. He knows that he cannot touch Solomon now. But what's in his mind? What's the point of asking to marry one of David's concubines? He's looking, farther. Like, what if he marries Abishag and has a kid from her? Then his kid, after Solomon, is going to be king, because he's pretty much the son of David, right? He's the son of David's concubine. So he has the right to be king. So that's in the back of his mind. Of course, Bathsheba, being a simple woman, she did not think about this. We said that she was very simple, very maybe naive. She was easily taken advantage of, right? In many situations in the Bible. But she did not think about this, and she said, "Okay, I will talk to Solomon about it." Bathsheba therefore went to King Solomon to speak to him for Adonijah, and the king rose up to meet her and bowed down to her and sat down on his throne, and had a throne set for the king's mother. So she sat at his right hand. Then she said, "I desire one small petition of you. Do not refuse me." And the king said to her, "Ask it, my mother, for I will not refuse you." So she said, "Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to Adonijah your brother as wife." So she very simply said to David what Adonijah told her. But of course, that didn't fly well with Solomon. Solomon knew that where he's coming from. And King Solomon answered and said to his mother, "Now why do you ask Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Ask for him the kingdom also. Because if he marries that lady, he's going to have the right, or his sons are going to have the right to be kings. Ask for him the kingdom also, for he is my older brother. For him and Abiathar the priest and Joab the son of Zeruiah." Who is Abiathar the priest and Joab? Those are the two that supported Adonijah when he wanted to proclaim himself king. Then King Solomon swore by the Lord, saying, "May God do so to me, and more also, if Adonijah has not spoken this word against his own life. Now therefore, as the Lord lives, who has confirmed me and set me on the throne of David my father, and who has established the house for me, as he promised, Adonijah shall be put to death today." So in this chapter, you will see a couple of people that Solomon killed. And the reason for the killings was, like we said, to establish his kingdom. Now, if you think about this situation just without any background, it's unacceptable. What's happening here? He's killing his brother, right? That's completely unacceptable. But if you think of it with the background that we talked about before, you deserve to die, but I will not kill you today because you did good things before and because you carried the Ark of the Covenant. So Solomon, but he put him to exile. So Solomon removed Abiathar from being priest to the Lord, that he might fulfill the word of the Lord which he spoke concerning the house of Eli at Shiloh. What's this referring to? You know, Abiathar is one of the grandsons of Eli the priest. Do you remember Eli, who was like the high priest at the time of Samuel? What did God tell him when he did not rebuke his sons? He told him, there will be a punishment in your family, in your descendants. So now that's why the Bible is telling us this is because of what the Lord had told Eli. So Abiathar was not killed but was exiled, and he ceased to be a priest. Then news came to Joab, for Joab had defected to Adonijah. Then the last person who supported Adonijah was Joab, the head of the army. And remember, David, one of his last words to Solomon was, be careful with Joab. Though he had not defected to Absalom, in the time of Absalom he did not defect, he stayed faithful to David. But in the time of Adonijah he was not faithful to Solomon. So Joab fled to the tabernacle of the Lord and took hold of the horns of the altar. So these were Joab's sins, that he killed two of the army heads in different times in peace. And David did not agree with this. So because of this, now Joab went to the tabernacle to hold on to the horns of the altar. What is he doing here? If you hold on to the horns of the altar, we talked about this last time. If you hold on to the horns of the altar and you are innocent, no one can touch you. And if someone commits a manslaughter, if I throw something by mistake and I kill someone, God told the people, the law is, if someone commits manslaughter, not knowing, it's not murder, it's manslaughter. He can go hold on to the horns of the altar, he's protected, he can go to one of the refuge cities and stay there until the high priest dies. And no one can touch him, no one can kill him. But in this case, this is not a manslaughter, this is actually murder. So in that case, the rest of the commandment was, if someone committed murder, he is not protected. Actually, God told Moses at the time, you take him down from my altar to be killed. Meaning that the horns are not going to protect him, the altar is not going to protect him. And King Solomon was told, Joab has fled to the tabernacle of the Lord. There he is by the altar. Then Solomon sent Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, saying, go strike him down. So Solomon was fulfilling the command or obeying the commandment that if he is not innocent, he will die even by the altar. So Benaiah went to the tabernacle of the Lord and said to him, thus says the king, come out. And he said no. So he didn't want to kill him in the tabernacle. So he told him to come out, but Joab refused. He said, no, but I will die here. And Benaiah brought back word to the king, saying, thus said Joab, and thus he answered me. Then the king said to him, do as he said, and strike him down and bury him, that you may take away from me and from my house of my father, the house of my father, the innocent blood which Joab shed. So Solomon was looking at it too as, this will kind of, I'm starting a new kingdom. I don't want anything from the sins that this man committed before. So the Lord will return his blood on his head, because he struck down two men more righteous and better than he, and killed them with the sword, Abner the son of Ner, the commander of the army of Israel, and Amasa the son of Jether, the commander of the army of Judah, though my father David did not know it. Their blood shall therefore return upon the head of Joab and upon the head of his descendants forever, but upon David and his descendants, upon his house and his throne, there shall be peace forever from the Lord. So Benaiah the son of Jehoiada went up and struck and killed him, and he was buried in his own house in the wilderness. So now what happened in this chapter so far? So Adonijah was killed, Abiathar the priest was exiled, and Joab was killed. There is one left from the ones that David talked to Solomon about, who is Shimei the son of Gera. So let's see what happens to him. The king put Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, who was actually the head of the king's, kind of secret service, or like the king's guards, King David's guards. He was the head of them, and he was very faithful to David. So Solomon made him the head of the army. And the king put Zadok the priest in the place of Abiathar. So now Solomon put, the right people in the right places, and he got rid of everyone who was a threat to him. Then the king sent and called for Shimei and said to him, "Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and dwell there, and do not go out from there anywhere." So he did not kill him right away, but he gave him a commandment. He said, "You're under house arrest." Not really house arrest, but city arrest. You cannot go out of Jerusalem. You have to live the rest of your life in Jerusalem. If you leave Jerusalem, you will die. "For it shall be on the day you go out and cross the brook Kidron," which is like the kind of the border of Jerusalem, "know for certain you shall surely die. Your blood shall be on your own head." So Solomon did not want to kill him with no reason. He wanted to leave it up to him. And if he sticks to the commandment, he will live. And Shimei said to the king, "The saying is good. As my lord the king has said, so your servant will do." So Shimei dwelt in Jerusalem many days. Now it happened at the end of 3 years. So he stayed 3 years in Jerusalem. He did not go out. At the end of 3 years, that 2 slaves of Shimei ran away to Achish, the son of Maacah, king of Gath. And they told Shimei, saying, "Look, your slaves are in Gath." So 2 of his slaves escaped, and he wanted to bring them back. But they escaped outside of Jerusalem. They went to a different city. And of course, he was not wise. He's going to lose his life because of bringing back 2 slaves. So Shimei arose, saddled his donkey, and went to Achish at Gath to seek his slaves. And Shimei went and brought his slaves from Gath. And Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and had come back. Then the king sent and called for Shimei and said to him, "Did I not make you swear by the Lord and warn you, saying, know for certain that on the day you go out and travel anywhere, you shall surely die? And you said to me, the word I have heard is good. Why then have you not kept the oath of the Lord and the commandment that I gave you?" The king said moreover to Shimei, "You know, as your heart acknowledges, all the wickedness that you did to my father David. Therefore the Lord will return your wickedness on your own head." So now he's saying to him, now you will die, because he did not listen to the commandment, and because of all the wickedness that you have done to my father David. But King Solomon shall be blessed, and the throne of David shall be established. You see, every time he kills someone, he's thinking about this. He wants his throne to be established. Yes, and one of the commandments that were given to Moses, that you cannot curse the head of your people. And his sin was deserving a punishment. So the king commanded Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and he went out and struck him down, and he died. Thus the kingdom was established in the hand of Solomon. So he got rid of the last one. I mean, this is the picture of Shimei the son of Gera when he was throwing stones at David. And this was the big sin that he committed, and because of which all this happened. So like Michael is saying, it was actually a commandment that he broke. So now the kingdom has been established for King Solomon. There are no threats. There is nobody that is going to give him any trouble. Of course, maybe in the back of his mind too, he was thinking about Absalom. Remember, Absalom is the one that gave really hard time to David when he revolted against him. So he was thinking of getting rid of everyone who could be a threat to his kingdom, and he's thinking about his kingdom being established. How about he's going to reign and what he's going to do? We can continue that next time. Any questions or comments? Because Abishag was the last person that was considered David's concubine. So David, one of his wives. If he has a son from her, that's considered like a son to David. So he may have a privilege over a son to Solomon after a generation or so to reign after Solomon. But he already lost his chance because God already chose Solomon. But now he's thinking about the next generation. If someone is a son of David or son of David's wife versus someone who is a grandson to David, maybe he's going to have a chance to be king. David died at the beginning of this chapter. Like all these killings happened after he died. But the stuff that we read last time, David was still alive. And actually, one of the church fathers said something about this, that actually I think St. Augustine said this, that if all this happened, if Solomon was king while David was alive, then the promise that God gave David, that from your descendants you will have the Messiah, pretty much. It was about the Messiah, not about Solomon, because it didn't happen after his death, like God said. It happened during his life, that Solomon reigned. But after his death, then the Messiah comes in the end of times. So there was an altar when someone goes to the tabernacle of meeting. There was an altar right after the entrance, and this is the altar of sacrifice. Anyone who committed a sin, anyone who wanted to give thanks to God, they offer a sacrifice to God. And that altar had horns, like the four sides of the altar had horns. So if someone clings to the horns, then he should be protected if he's innocent. Yes. So Solomon was anointed king while David was alive. So he started his reign while David was alive. No, it's when God told David, after you die, I will have a king that will reign forever. That's not Solomon. That's the Messiah. It's something very it's a detail that one of the fathers of the church paid attention to. Yes, it wasn't fulfilled exactly. That was the idea. Okay, let's pray. In the name of the Father and Son and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. We thank you, our dear Lord. Thank you for your love and kindness. We thank you for your forgiveness to us. We thank you that your forgiveness is without regret, without going back, without remembering our sins. We thank you that you are a good Father to us, and we thank you that we can always come to you. With people, it's not easy to do this, but we can come to you anytime, and you accept us all the time. We thank you because you're always forgiving and you're always loving. Through the intercessions of Saint Mary, Archangel Michael, all the saints, hear us, God, and we pray thankfully. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Give us daily bread. Forgive us our trespass, and forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Encourage us,